Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Because you all were asking for it, today we're going to be looking at some Doom Eternal characters. We have Doomslayer, we have some demons, and we even have the Icon of Sin. Let's get started. Alright, let's take a look at the most important character in Doom, the Doomslayer. And here I have with the base Predator suit, and I think it looks fantastic. We're not in the engine, of course, so we don't have all the knickknacks and things that you usually have with the shaders that come with a game like this. But, so you can see him with his textures around, all the detail he has. We're going to look at geometry, UVs in a second. One of the things about this character is he is several parts. He's not just one single part, and each part has one material. So again, from all the variations that we've seen in this channel about the game AAA game models, you can see that there's all kinds of things that you can choose from. You can have one single welded mesh with several materials, or you can have several meshes, each mesh with its own material. Of course, these are usually joined by one single rig. All right, so you can see there's a lot here that is very, very good when it comes to looping things around. And for the most part, what I see in this character is, aside from the stylization, because characters in Doom, like whether you demons and humans, they're stylized. They look realistic texture wise, but proportion wise they're very stylized. Nobody is as big as this guy. So just looking at different pieces, let's just isolate one. That this isn't a welded mesh. So the mesh has thickness in some parts of the armor. Usually, I don't think I've explained this yet. So the way that you go about doing something like this, and oh, would you look at that? It's welded over here, but it's not welded in the arms or in the lower part. The way you do these kind of model, like these topology that you have here, is you have the high poly. So the high poly, usually something like this, even though it's hard surface, it's most likely sculpted in ZBrush. Probably little bits and pieces modeled in the DCC app like Maya or Blender. I'd say most likely ZBrush. That's usually what you use when you're dealing with your high poly model. Then when you get into the low poly, which is the in-game mesh, this is when you get very technical, because as you can see here, you got to figure out how the loops are going to go to hold that bait, because that is all you are worried here. Just trying to hold that bait, because let me, before we continue, this whole thing is 188,000 triangles. I think we're starting to see a pattern with AAA games in the sense that probably 100,000, it's not damaging at all when it comes to performance. Usually for the game like this, you'd have the Doomslayer and you have several characters all around, like all the demons coming at you all the time with all the VFX and stuff. So there is enough budget for you to make a character that is around this range. You can see that these little ridges right here, there are modeled. These are details that I would have thought they would be normal maps, but they're not. They're geometry. So this is a couple of things to take into account. One of the interesting things that we see here is, again, what I keep saying. If a surface is not deforming, do not worry about triangles that much. It doesn't mean that you're going to have stars all over the place, of course. But you don't have to worry about having triangles so much, because look at the geometry here. Could this have been a quad? Maybe. Wasn't necessarily. Absolutely not. Because this, like the chest plate's never going to deform. The chest plate is just one single piece. That being said, it's one single piece, but you can see that the loops have a very nice flow. And everything here has a very nice flow to it. Let's look at the helmet. The helmet's very interesting because this helmet has an inside. So as you can see, this thing it has geometry on the inside because let's go into the texture mode. You can see that it has maps on the inside when he grabs this helmet and put it on, because you're going to see the inside. That being said, this is quite a bit of geometry for the inside of the helmet, but you still see some normal maps. So you can see that this big polygon right here, it has this very nice detail that is baked down. That is just normal maps. Same for these details over here. I'm not turning around because I have the lighting in a certain position, but I just wanted to show you the inside of the helmet, and you can appreciate all of the materials that it has with the normal maps and everything. And we'll talk a little bit further in the UVs. So yeah, the geometry on the inside, it's quite high for a place where the player's not usually gonna see it. Now, when we go into the helmet, you can see that the helmet has a lot of features, and a lot of these features are modeled. You cannot get away with normal maps when it comes to vents. Some games do it, but for today, for current gen, because next gen doesn't exist yet, for current gen, you have to model these because it's something that has depth, and when your player sees it, if it doesn't have geometry, it's going to be very apparent that it's like a normal map with a picture stuck there. So it doesn't look good. This is one of the places where you have to take care of, where is my player going to see depth here? Sometimes the normal maps will not do it. So same thing with these ridges right here. I'm pretty sure that because the budget on this, look, just the helmet is 24,000. That's quite a bit just for the helmet. But still, you have good flow and good loops going all around the area. All right, so this is the weapon. We already seen weapons. This is exactly the same that we saw on the other video. So I'm not gonna look at that, but his body, there's no body underneath the armor. So as you can see, the arms are completely open. These aren't welded meshes. Although now that I see it, let's look at this arm and see the separation between this and the glove. You can see that the glove is, yeah, the glove is open, or the gauntlet, however you want to call it. The fingers follow the usual loop that we've been seeing so far on most characters, where you have some nice loops in between your fingers, and when you get to the joint, this is where you spend a little bit more geometry. Of course, he has those extra kind of like knuckles or something, but he does have a little bit of extra area in here for more detail due to the armor. I think this gauntlet looks fantastic. All right, so let's see, the legs are one single piece. So as you can see, you can just see underneath. It's like a suit, which is very interesting. It's like a suit that you can get into. And you can see that everything is just one piece. I'm trying to see if there are some things that are separated. So let's see. Okay, you got this part, and it's an open mesh, just with a little bit of thickness because it's on top of other things. So, but look, it has these features modeled as opposed to not modeled, which is, I think, very interesting. All right, let's look at the UVs. All right, here we are, the UVs for the torso. As you can see, very nice and very well laid out. They do have an order, and no pieces are outside, even though I would say this suit is symmetrical. So maybe some pieces could have been taken out and just save real estate. You don't have to do that all the time. It depends on your art direction. But you can see that everything is well laid out and everything is packed, because some people have asked me, like, why is this UV like rotated like this as opposed to being completely straight? Sometimes when you're packing UVs, and I don't think this, well, to me, this doesn't look like it was auto packed. I think this was packed intentionally. Usually when you have things like this, you just gotta fit things in a way that you can take advantage of the most real estate from your 0-1 space. So that's why some things are rotated. Because for instance, if you see this part right here, if it wasn't rotated and if you put it straight, it would occupy more space and this piece right here would not fit. So that's why sometimes when you put UVs here, you have to figure out, it's kind of like playing puzzles. You just playing puzzles and try to fit your parts as best as you can so you can take advantage of the most real estate. One thing that's very important is always have a little bit of a gap, which is the famous padding that you see in Substance Painter. Always leave a little bit of a gap so that there's a little bit of bleed between the textures and there's no artifacts, especially when you're baking. If your UVs are like super close, like 1 pixel of difference, you're going to have trouble when you're baking. So now that we're here looking at the texture, one of the things that always caught my attention and one of the things that I think makes Doom stand out visually is the fact that, well, what you're seeing right here, the textures, even though this game has a realistic-ish art style, because it's not cartoony. I wouldn't call this game cartoony. It is stylized. But you can see that their textures have a little bit of vibrancy to their colors. So you can see that even though this is an armor that has been worn out, and when you get it in engine, you have all the correct shaders, you can see all that. But just the diffuse, you can see that there are colors that really pop. There are colors that call your attention. And this is one of the things that I really like about the textures of the characters in Doom, because we're going to see it on Demons as well. I like it. So what do you think? Do you like this kind of texturing better? Do you like the more nitty gritty, realistic, kind of like photo scan textures? Or do you like a little bit of more cartoony texture? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'd like to see what people think about that. All right, in here you can see that you got your arm on this side, huge arm by the way. And then you got your fingers. The fingers always, when they're unwrapped, they're pretty funny looking. And you can see that this is, we've seen some characters that look like this, where they actually split the hand around the pinky area and just like open it and pelt it. The other stuff that I find interesting is all the bits and pieces that are very small, even though they're modeled, they're broken apart. And you can see them, like these parts right here are outside, which is something that you can do. Your bags are going to be just fine, especially with software nowadays like Substance Painter where you can paint on 3D. The bags are going to be just fine when you do this kind of stuff. And yeah, you can see all the detail that is done around here. Very cool. I really like the textures for this game. All right, let's look at the helmet. And once again, the way that the helmet is unwrapped is very particular. All the detail, like all the little bits and pieces from the inside and the outside of the helmet, you can see that they're laid around. And you can see that in order to utilize the most real estate from 0 to 1 space, you don't have your helmet unwrapped like straight like a mask. You have it angled because you have more real estate in this part as opposed to just going straight like this. All right, so I think that's for the Doomslayer. Let's look at some demons. All right, and here we are, the Arachnotron. One of the, I think this is a fan favorite. People like this demon, and it shows up very often in the game. And you can see how cool it looks like in between the fleshy parts and the mechanical parts, because most demons have some cybernetics on them. And yeah, I think this is pretty cool. Also, look at the textures, just what I've been talking about with when we were looking at the Doomslayer. The diffuse map, because this doesn't have any roughness or any metalness or anything. The diffuse map is really colorful and it pops. So in an environment as chaotic as the Doom environment, is very important for your player to be able to tell what's what. You usually can do that with the readability and the overall silhouette of the character. We'll talk about that in another video, so make sure you subscribe, by the way. But another way to do it is with textures. So textures is a pretty cool way to do it. I just love the way that these textures are made. All right, you can see that this demon is not as high as the Doomslayer. 59,000 polygons, which is not bad. So this tells you a little bit of the difference between the polygons between the main character and the enemies, because enemies you'll have more than one. But still, 59, 60 for an enemy, it's quite a bit. There's quite a bit that you can do with the character with that amount of polygons. You got good hard surface here. Now let's grab this part of the head, isolated. So as you can see, open mesh, easier to rig, but it has a mouth bag. So we've talked about mouth bags in previous games, and this thing has a tongue too. I mentioned in the previous game that this was the throat. It's not. This is usually the tongue. So you can see that this mesh right here, and it's going to flip if we go to edit mode. But if we grab this and we go all the way back here, you can see that that part sticking out that looks like it's the throat. It's not the throat, it's the tongue usually. Because the tongue usually goes a little bit further back, just especially on a character like this, just so you can use the bones to extrude it and do all kinds of nasty movements in the case of this character. But you do have a mouth back because you can see in the inside of the mouth. One thing that is very interesting to me is usually when you model characters, you model them with the mouth closed. Like all the characters that we've seen here usually don't have their mouth open. That's something that you do after rigging. I wonder why is it done this way, especially with demons. If you know, let me know in the comment sections down below. I know there's some developers sometimes, for some reason, these videos have gotten to the people who make these things. So if you made this, just let me know why this was modeled with the open mouth as opposed to the mouth being closed like most characters. So one of the things that is interesting about these is, even though these are round surfaces, they're not, they didn't give them that many polygons. And we've been seeing that sometimes in environment pieces, when there's a round surfaces, usually has a ton of geometry. This one doesn't have much geometry, and you can actually see the jagged edges all around this, which you didn't see on the Slayer. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. This is just something that is decided when you're making a character. Not all characters are created equal. I'm just pointing out the differences, so you can see the patterns and maybe you can relate with your own art or with your own game. As you can see, the purpose of this model is so that it gets destroyed. So the inside pieces, even though they are covered, they're all modeled and textured and had a ton of detail, because you are, as a player, going to see underneath, and you're just not going to see like an ugly square just hanging in there. So that's why certain bits and pieces are modeled, even though they're obscured by other things. We're going to see this is more apparent with the icon of sin. But let's look at the UVs for this character. All right, so we're looking at the head, and you can see that just like the other UVs, trying to take advantage of the most real estate they can. And the way I'm tilting my head because this thing is like this, and it kind of looks like a butterfly, which is very funny. So you can see exactly here where the seam is located at, and it goes this way, which again, that seam is hidden by this part right here. So creative way of hiding your seams is use the other pieces of your character. If your character has something on top of that, just like the hair on human characters, there's a piece right here that's covering this seam. So that seam's never going to be seen by the player. And you can see that this has a lot of detail that is baked into it as normal maps. One of the things that when I was teaching in college, that students would ask me is if there was a problem when baking, if your bakes will be on top of an edge or on top of a vertice. As you can see here, it's not a big deal. You don't have to have a detail on a bare polygon like on the face for it to bake well. You can have it on edges, you can have it on vertices. It doesn't matter. It's as long as it follows the silhouette and it wraps the model with enough geometry. It doesn't matter where you place your detail, whether it's on top of vertice or in between some edges, it's still going to bake fine. All right, so let's look at our final character. It's gonna be the icon of sin. All right, so I haven't repositioned the camera in the viewport just so you can see how massive this character is. And another thing before we get into the icon of sin, this is actually a character that somebody requested in the comment section. So let me know what you like to see on the videos. I like to read all your comments and see what people liked. I want to give my audience the content that they want to see. So let me know what you want to see. It might just be on the next video. Okay, so just like I mentioned in the Arachnotron, the deal with some of the demons, well, I guess most of them, in fact, they have bits and pieces that fall off, especially the icon of sin, because the icon of sin has several stages. So one of the interesting things about this model is how the pieces of this character, because this has several stages, it's just a different piece. Everything is just a different piece. You can see that if I delete it, it goes away, but you can see underneath. So this is very interesting about these characters here. And yeah, I just want to show you, like, you can see underneath. If I hide it, you can see, especially in the fingers, that the more that you damage it, the more that you can see through it. So that's very interesting about these characters. I'm guessing, you know, as you destroy it, is mesh that goes away. And that is what you get. One of the things about the icon of sin that's very interesting is look at that many triangles. Almost 260,000 triangles. I've deleted some little bits here and there because I don't want YouTube demonetizing this video because of gore. So, because that's how the mesh is called. Those parts are called gore. And I don't want YouTube to do anything to the video. The channel just got monetized. Thank you so much, everybody who've been supporting, sharing, liking, and all that. Just got monetized a couple weeks ago. So I'm just hiding certain bits and pieces that I know YouTube's not going to like. But overall, this character is huge in terms of not only size, but the amount of polygons. And just like we've discussed, the reason for this is because this is a big character. If it's a big character and it gets close to your player and it's just normal maps, your player is going to see it. All right, here wireframes, so you can look at the geometry and you can see how dense this guy is. And there are things underneath because, like I said, and we actually can take it out. So the fingers is one of the things that's the most destructible about this character. So you can see that we can take it out all the way to the bone. And there is still some very dense geometry underneath. So that's why this character is so heavy polygon wise. But still, you can see that this little detail from his armor. So yeah, you can see like the geometry of this thing is fantastic. And I say fantastic because look at all the little bits and pieces that go here. Even if we get closer, you can see that this little detail, although it's not that little because this thing is monstrous, it's, you know, everything is modeled. It's not just normal maps. And it also has to hold well when baking, because if your high poly has these ridges and you don't bake it, you can get some artifacts if you make it flat, or it's just going to look horrible. All right, let's look at some UVs. Okay, this thing has a ton of materials because it has so many pieces. Let's look at one side of the torso and see how the UVs go about. You can see this is this whole part of the torso and it's just one half. So the other half is another texture piece. And this is something when you are optimizing, a lot of people relate optimizing to reducing. So it means when you talk about optimizing, people think it's just you're taking things out and you're reducing to its lowest common denominator. Sometimes optimizing means what is best for the engine, what is best for the player. So you're not so worried about, okay, I'm going to have so many draw calls because each one has a normal map, each one has probably a roughness map, each one has a diffuse map. In this case, you are focusing on the player experience, And also when you're dealing with the icon of sin, you don't have as many characters on screen. So as always, I know this answer sucks for some people, but whenever you are creating and deciding what you're going to do, it all depends on what is the purpose of that piece. And just so you can have some nightmare fuel, these are the UVs of the head. Oh my god, this looks horrific. But that's the purpose. One thing that I'll say, this looks more horrific than the whole thing put together. Because wow, if this face looks to me a night, yeah, I don't want to. And because the head is out over here, now you can see how this looks. Yeah, this is pretty scary. This is a very interesting unwrap because it's one of those few instances where if I show you this image, you can totally read what it is. So it's very, very interesting. If I take this out, you can see the whole armature on top. Kind of looks like General Grievous right now, but with the UVs, it looks scarier. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching all the way to this point. Remember to leave a like, leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. What other games would you like to see next? Leave it in the comment section down below. My socials are in the description. You can follow me on X and make sure you're subscribed so you can see all my posts in the community tab. And I'll see you in the next one.